This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Floor crossing. Reaction to Nova Scotia MP Chris d'Entremont joining the Liberal caucus.
Special spaces. The province's tourism industry says parks and protected areas should be off limits for development.
And we take a look at how Nova Scotia seniors' daily lives are affected by ageism.
Our next system is rolling in with rain and wet snow in the mix for Thursday. Your full forecast details are coming up.
Good evening. Nova Scotia's federal political map is now entirely red. Acadianapolis MP Chris d'Entremont crossed the floor in Ottawa yesterday to sit with the governing Liberals.
The CBC's Taryn Grant visited his riding to hear what constituents think about his political move.
Conservative MP Chris d'Entremont is now Liberal MP Chris d'Entremont. In Ottawa, he's being embraced by his Liberal colleagues and chastised by his former Conservative caucus mates. But another, arguably more important group of people are forming their opinions back home in Nova Scotia, his constituents.
I'm kind of glad, Rita, that Chris took his time to think about things that he wanted and he felt that we wanted. So I'm glad that he decided to cross over.
It's upsetting. I supported Chris in the last election under Pierre Poilievre's leadership, as did my wife. So yeah, we were both kind of upset to see it happen, honestly.
Well, I'm kind of neutral on it. I'm not worried about it. As long as he's done a lot of good for us, and I'm not sure whether it bothers me that much or not.
d'Entremont says he made the decision for his constituents to put the full force of government behind their concerns. But he also signaled a divide between him and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
Over the last number of months, I wasn't feeling that I was aligned with the ideals of what the leader of the opposition had been talking about.
This political science professor says that's a classic reason for a floor crossing. Alex Marland has researched floor crossings extensively and just released a book on the topic.
Looking at all parliamentarians at the provincial level and federal level since 1980, the number one reason is if you are unhappy with your leader, then there's a good chance you're not going to stick around.
d'Entremont says Liberals made him no promises in exchange for the crossing. Voters aren't making any promises either. Would you vote for him as a Liberal?
I don't know. Now we'll see when that time comes.
Taryn Grant, CBC News, Kingston, Nova Scotia.
A longtime Nova Scotia Conservative and the former president of the Conservative Party of Canada says Chris d'Entremont has betrayed his voters and the province.
He ran 3 times as a Conservative, and he told the fishermen in his riding and elsewhere across the province that he would fight for them. And ultimately, the voters make the ultimate decision as to whether it's right or wrong. But the reality is, we are now without a voice in Ottawa. We have a Liberal monopoly, all 11 seats. Nobody at the federal level to hold the government accountable.
Liberal MPs in Nova Scotia and the Maritimes also gave their reaction to d'Entremont crossing the floor.
I've known Chris d'Entremont for a long time. Atlantic Canada is a small place. He's a fellow Acadian. I think it's terrific what he's decided to do.
He's always been completely about his community, so really thrilled to have the opportunity to welcome him to the team. So thank you.
And he's a great guy. He's a good MP. He's a good constituency MP. We've worked in files together like Bay Ferries, the Digby Ferry, and he'll be an asset to our caucus. I'm thrilled.
There are a number of moderate conservatives that are on the other side that I think are looking at this type of government and saying that's the type of government that actually represents the type of politics I want to see. So it's great to have Chris. He's a progressive conservative at heart, and he will be very comfortable in our party.
And still with politics, Tuesday's federal budget includes funding for a new national emergency alert system. It makes good on a recommendation from the committee that examined the 2020 mass shooting here in Nova Scotia. The budget earmarks more than $55 million for the new system over 4 years. The National Public Alerting System, known as Alert Ready, sends Canadians critical information about emergencies, including public safety threats and natural disasters. The Mass Casualty Commission had recommended a comprehensive review of the system. The RCMP came under fire for not using the system during the massacre.
The province's natural resources minister says she's willing to consider development proposals in protected areas. But some groups are beginning to speak out against that. As Michael Gorman reports, they say the government is turning its back on promises to the public and missing existing economic development opportunities.
The president of Nova Scotia's Tourism Industry Association says she's all for this kind of development, but not here at West Mabou Beach Provincial Park.
So while we very much support new tourism investment and new development, not in our protected areas, not in our public parks, there's lots of land available for sale in Nova Scotia. And we feel very strongly about that for this one and every other protected area.
Grant Finder's comments come a week after the Natural Resources Minister confirmed she's reviewing a proposal from Cabot Cape Breton to build an 18-hole golf course in West Mabou Beach Provincial Park, and she's open to discussing development proposals in other protected areas.
We have to stop saying no. We have to be able to have conversations. And we previously have said no, no, no before even having a conversation.
Grant Finder says Maslin's position overlooks the value parks and protected areas already provide to the province's tourism economy.
Revenue last year was $3.5 billion. We employ 58,000 people across the province. The natural assets we have are a tremendous driver of that activity. And low-impact recreational activities are important. We want people to get in and experience the parks.
She's not the only one who thinks protected areas need to be left alone.
Nova Scotians really care about nature. It's really a part of our identity, and we care about our protected areas in Nova Scotia. So even though the message is that the provincial government wants to potentially open these areas for development, Nova Scotians really won't stand for it.
The executive director of Nature Nova Scotia says the situation raises questions of just how protected a protected area actually is.
If a protected area can be delisted or sold or leased to some kind of development or activity that is objectively harmful to it, then nothing is safe. And if you have a favorite hunting, fishing, hiking, birding spot, you should be worried about it and start talking to your representatives about how they could help you protect it, because the province is not going to.
Maslin says a decision on Cabot's proposal would not be made without community and First Nation consultation. She says the government wants to find the balance between creating economic development and protecting land. Michael Gorman, CBC News, Halifax.
Meanwhile, today, the province announced it has designated 1,200 more hectares of land in 16 parks and protected areas across Nova Scotia. And our first quick look at the weather forecast now with Ryan Snoddon.
And the unsettled pattern continues, right?
It certainly does. A very active pattern. Another system on the doorstep, rolling in overnight and throughout the day on Thursday, bringing not only rain and gusty winds, but a few flakes in the mix. Let's walk you through this timeline. So overnight and in through Thursday, this one moves in really, really quickly. And for Thursday morning's commute, we're looking at wet weather, and yes, in the pink and blue here, this is the potential for some of those wet flakes to mix in with the rain. I'm not expecting that we'll see accumulation from this, aside from maybe some of the grassy sides of the roads on places like the Cobequid Mountains, and perhaps the higher terrain areas of the 104 and up towards the Cape Breton Highlands. Most of us, though, could see at least a few flakes splattering on the windshield mixed with that rain that will be coming down in the morning. The winds kick in from the northwest Thursday afternoon. We're talking gusts in the 60, 70 kilometer per hour range. Could see some gusts along the coast to near 80. We're going to clear out again for Friday, and then another system set for Saturday. We'll walk you through it with your full 7-day coming up.
Lots to talk about. Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
HRM has announced it is closing and de-designating another encampment location. People sleeping rough at the Lower Flynn Park encampment near Quinpool Road must leave the site by December the 7th. The decision follows a shooting at the Lower Flynn Park encampment in late October that left a man with life-threatening injuries. Police said the shooting was not a random incident. The city says as of October 30th, there were 59 tents and 4 trailers at the remaining designated encampments in the municipality.
Nova Scotia's new Municipal Affairs Minister appeared at the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities John A. McDonald, says that Premier Tim Houston's focus on natural resource projects are key to boosting the economy. But some residents and local leaders have raised concerns about how this direction impacts local communities.
That's going to be communication. Like, we have to explain it, right? I mean, we have to explain how to do it responsibly and ethically, and that's what we will do. The Premier has said we are going to unleash Nova Scotia's power, but we're going to do it responsibly and ethically.
McDonald says he's happy to hear about the new federal budget, promising billions of dollars in local infrastructure money over the next decade.
The superintendent of Nova Scotia's Francophone School Board says the province needs to build more Francophone schools. Michelle Collette of the Conseil Scolaire Acadien Provincial, or CSAP, says as many as 3/4 of eligible students are not enrolled for Francophone schools. He says the main drivers are geography and large catchment areas. In some parts of the province, students would have to travel hundreds of kilometers from home to attend a Francophone school. Collette is calling on the province to build more.
CSAP, on several occasions, has had the principle of build it and they will come. We can take our school in Bridgewater, same thing. We can take their school in Chesapeake, same thing. These are schools that start with a very, very small population and grow to 300, 400, 500 kids. So there are French language speakers throughout this province.
The Department of Education has committed to creating a working group to explore CSAP's concerns.
Well, what does it feel like to have your life experience ignored? For many Nova Scotia seniors, it's an everyday reality. Now, as our population ages, a growing movement of Nova Scotia seniors is demanding respect, visibility, and a voice in their own communities. Vernon Ramasar has more.
I think that looks good.
For 81-year-old Brooks Field, ageism is something she experiences every day.
They explain things very simply because you don't understand. I've been around the world for a long time, and I don't need anybody to talk to me like that, and I find it quite insulting very often.
Age discrimination can often be subtle, and for many older Nova Scotians, it diminishes their dignity and is a constant irritation.
I get some people saying, "Oh, dear," and that word "dear" in front of an older person really makes you feel older somehow. But just that condescending because you can't see or because you're old, you can't think anymore, and you don't have anything worth saying.
Bill Van Gorder of CARP says ageism relies on the assumption that advanced age means a person has lost their independence, mental sharpness, or desire to contribute.
We do assume things about people just because of their age, whether they're young or whether they're old. It seems to be the only acceptable ism that's left today. They often tell us they find it in the healthcare system. They feel like they're being treated differently because of their age.
That prejudice clashes with the economic reality for many seniors who have to work well past 65 to make ends meet. There is also technological exclusion. While many older adults can use digital tools, their cautious approach is often met with condescension instead of support or training.
Some people are capable at 80 to be still working, and some people lose their capabilities when they're in their 50s. Age does not matter.
Throughout Nova Scotia, organizations are actively creating spaces where ageism is not just discussed, but actively rejected.
We don't accept ageism here at Spencer House. We try to be a model of what true inclusion looks like in the community.
Meanwhile, advocates are pushing for more skills training to keep seniors productive longer.
We need, as CARP is doing, to run programs and supports to teach them how to use the internet. It does take training, but they're quick to learn, and it's probably the easiest part of reemployment for seniors.
More than 1 in 4 Nova Scotians are predicted to be 65 and over by 2030, making the work organizations like CARP and Spencer House do all the more important. Vernon Ramasar, CBC News, Halifax.
Well, after 2 close losses, Team Atlantic pulled out a big win last night in the Under-18 Women's National Championships in Newfoundland.
As Team Atlantic will secure second place in Group B with a 4-2 win over Team British Columbia.
The home team came up big in their battle with British Columbia, doubling up on the West Coast crew by a score of 4-2.
The win secures a second-place finish in Group B for Team Atlantic, setting up a quarterfinal game against Manitoba tomorrow night. Some bright lights on the Halifax waterfront. Ryan is up next with the full weather forecast. We'll see you in just a few minutes.
This weather update is brought to you in part by Atlantic Lottery's iGames. Play hundreds of games on the Atlantic Lottery app or at alc.ca.
So much to talk about in the weather forecast tonight. More wet weather on the way.
Yes, yes, and you've been shaping some young minds, answering their questions about the weather.
Yeah, that's right. Typically, this time of year is when the kids are, learning about the weather, especially the grade 5s, but also the grade 2s.
Oh.
And so, I got to visit with a class today from there.
Yeah.
Talon Senior Elementary.
Bright-looking minds, yeah.
This is Miss Cisco's grade 2-3 class, and they were very good. Grade 2-3, they sat quietly and let me ramble on for minutes. And
you must have
that's what we
enjoyed
do,
that.
right,
I
Ryan?
did. Yeah, exactly. No, they're a great class. And thanks so much to Miss Cisco's class for inviting me. Always great to chat to the kiddos. Okay, so temperatures, as you can see out there right now, just one at that Collegeville station that's inland Antigonish County. You can see temperatures for the rest of the province, for the most part, into the mid to high single digits. And as we look at those winds, yeah, they've been easing throughout the day today, thankfully. Really, really gusty this morning, as we all know. If you were outside, you could really feel those winds howling. Still pretty gusty across Cape Breton, still 40 to 50 there. And as we look at the weather systems map, here's the clouds, which are building in on the leading edge of that next system. And that next system not only bringing some rain, but a few flakes, a few of those snowflakes mixing in with this system. By the way, there's the storm that continues to impact Newfoundland with some very strong winds. The snow continues for Corner Brook on the west coast. That has been a big storm for them. Now, there is the low that we're going to be dealing with. Then we've got an area of high pressure to follow it up for Friday. But the track stays active with yet another system diving onto the west coast right now, and that will sweep in and impact us on Saturday. You can see temperatures across the country right now that are looking very November-ish. We're single digits across the prairies, minus double digits in the north, and yeah, the heat is pushed down to the lower third of the United States. Temperatures for tonight are going to be in that 3, 4, 5 range for overnight lows, but we'll dip into the 1 and 2 range, as we already have at that Collegeville station, as I mentioned, in through the northeast of the province. So timeline-wise, as this rolls through, it is going to be an initial shot of rain and then periods of rain to follow it up for Thursday morning. And these areas highlighted in blue, these are our best chances to see some of that snow, perhaps even accumulating a little bit on the grassy areas. This is where we're talking about the Cape Breton Highlands and the Cobequid Pass. But as we move throughout the morning and these periods of rain continue, that north wind is going to kick in. And as that north wind kicks in, we'll actually see a better chance of some flakes mixing in for South Mountain, higher terrain areas of Halifax County, up into the 104, including Mount Tom, and then of course the Highlands and the Cobequid Pass. So yeah, lots of areas could see some snowflakes mixing in with that rain tomorrow morning, even as far south as the metro area. So don't be surprised if you do see it. And then by the time we get to Thursday afternoon, we're looking at just some scattered showers, a few flakes still mixing in for the Cape Breton Highlands, and some sun breaks in the 4 or 5 p.m. time frame. And not much sun left by that time of day, but we could see some breaks. 5, 6, 7 degrees for the most part in the east tomorrow. Looking at those winds from the north, 50 gusting 70 to 80 kilometers per hour, so it will really kick in, that north wind will, as that storm departs. We're looking at northwest winds, 30 gusting to 60 in through central areas. Could see some gusts towards 70 up towards New Glasgow and Caribou Point. Northwest winds gusting 70 kilometers per hour, especially coastal areas of the Tri-County area. Rainfall totals from this system, we're talking about 10 to 30 millimeters with some pockets that could certainly push up towards 40 millimeters, maybe even 50 locally, but generally 10 to 30. Then on Friday, pretty brisk day in terms of the winds and the temperatures. Chance for some showers and lingering flurries for Cape Breton. Otherwise, it's quiet. Then our next system rolls in. Again, one after the other here, with this next system rolling in on Saturday. And we'll see the southerly winds with this. Some wet weather and temperatures bumping back up into the double digits, even some low teens. Sunday looks quieter, some sunny breaks, and another system to follow on Monday. We'll do it all over again early next week. Tom and Amy.
Rinse and repeat.
You bet, exactly. Great minds, Amy.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right, thanks so much, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, they were aiming for 4,000, but volunteers in Stratford PEI have knitted and crocheted 14,000 poppies that the town will display on Remembrance Day.
One of the knitters calls it a work of love to show her respect for veterans and those serving in the military, including her grandson. The CBC's Nancy Russell has that story.
Volunteers have been knitting and crocheting these poppies since February, a project inspired by similar ones in other communities, including Wellington in Western PEI. The initial goal was 4,000 poppies.
So I was a bit worried. I was like, am I going to be learning to crochet poppies in October and crying in my office? But I didn't have to worry. I wish I never worried. And Kathleen Gallant Wellington told me that, don't worry, they'll come. And they came.
The town held a community meeting and the project took off from there. Not all of the volunteers are Stratford residents. Peggy Ling is from Charlottetown and heard about the project on social media.
I made $1,130. Would have made more, only they kind of ran out of yarn.
For Peggy Ling, as for many of the volunteers, making the poppies was personal.
When I first started, I thought of my uncle, anybody that I knew that was a vet, and then I started thinking about active members that I have in-laws, and then I got to the point where I thought, you know what, all the unknowns that nobody thinks about. So don't make me tear. Kind of get teary-eyed when I think about it. All the ones that have nobody to remember them.
The Mayflower Seniors Club in Stratford contributed 1,743 poppies. One of the club volunteers calls the project a work of love.
The young ones that are serving now, I have a grandson who's 23, and he is so ecstatic about this project, because he said, you know, you think about it, he said, Grandma, he said, every poppy represents one of us.
The final tally was more than 14,000 poppies. And then came more volunteers, tying them all on fish netting that will be hung as drapes.
I think I'm going to have a few tissue, because it's just such a moment of pride in my community, in my island, and my country. That we could pull off such a gigantic project.
I cannot wait to see the final drapes hung up, but I think it's just proud that our community is contributing in something so meaningful for Remembrance Day.
The drapes covered in 14,000 poppies will hang indoors and outside Town Hall for Remembrance Day. Nancy Russell, CBC News, Stratford.
Coming up, the former president of the Conservative Party weighs in on Nova Scotia MP Chris d'Entremont crossing the floor. Big upset in federal politics this week. Nova Scotia Conservative MP Chris d'Entremont stunned his party by crossing the floor Tuesday to join Prime Minister Mark Carney and the governing Liberals. Rob Batherson is former president of the federal Conservative Party. So you seemed quite upset yesterday, saying that you hadn't felt that betrayed in more than 30 years in politics. Tell me about that.
Well, it's hard when you know someone for 25 years, and when you see someone who looks you in the eye and looks in the eyes of your supporters and says that he will be the voice for Nova Scotia as part of the official opposition. So I never woke up any morning thinking that Chris d'Entremont would become a Liberal when he has run 3 times under the Conservative banner, and without getting into all the personal issues, besides that, what a lot of people don't realize is behind the scenes in politics, there are lots of things that happen in terms of helping those who are front of house, so to speak. I guess we use the theater motif. And so, when you spend a lot of time helping someone and supporting that person, and they turn around and go against what they appear to have stood for, as recently as last August.
Now, he says there are a lot of Conservatives who feel the same way he does. He knows of some, at least. Are you concerned maybe that the Conservative Party is not taking into account the so-called red Tories?
Well, I'm a progressive Conservative, and my values have been progressive Conservative values for 30 years. But I don't walk away. I fight for those values each and every day. And the reality is, in the April 2025 election, more than 200,000 Nova Scotians voted for the Conservative Party of Canada. And Chris d'Entremont came to my annual meeting in Halifax West in June and said he would be the voice for those 200,000 plus Nova Scotians.
Well, could it be, though, that some Conservatives just like the approach, maybe the style that Mark Carney brings to the table as opposed to Trudeau?
Well, I think they should judge Mark Carney on the substance. He promised the best economy in the G7. We have the worst. There's been no action in terms of helping people with the cost of living. Our housing situation continues to deteriorate. We're going to have runaway deficits for years and years and years. That will contribute to a cost of living crisis. And so I think Canadians are going to judge the government whenever that election is, whether it's within weeks or whether it's within years, around delivery and results. And we haven't seen positive results. And Chris d'Entremont himself, interviewed by CBC and other media outlets since the election, talking about how young people are struggling, how fish harvesters are struggling. I stood on a wharf in Westover with Chris d'Entremont and Rick Perkins and others with fishermen during the federal election, where we promised them we would fight for them. And Chris has walked away from that fight.
In that federal election, d'Entremont won a close race with the Liberals. You yourself ran, you came second. Could that be a reflection of maybe he understands more of what Nova Scotians want from an NP?
Well, we'll see. He ran 3 times as a Conservative, and he told the fishermen in his riding and elsewhere across the province that he would fight for them. And ultimately, the voters make the ultimate decision as to whether it's right or wrong. But the reality is, we are now without a voice in Ottawa. We have a Liberal monopoly, all 11 seats. Nobody at the federal level to hold the government accountable for their promises and to hold the government accountable for cost of living, housing, immigration, our poor economic performance, all those issues. When Mark Carney takes a knee and apologizes to Donald Trump, again, because he seems to like that, who's going to hold him accountable?
Now,
There's nobody.
Mr. d'Entremont says it's time to move a country forward, to stop being so negative. We do hear a lot of negativity from Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. Lost a huge lead going into the federal election. Mr. Poilievre didn't win his seat, had to go to a by-election. Now he faces a leadership review. What are his chances of leading this party forward, or do you think someone else needs to step up and take his place?
Well, I reject that premise based on the facts. Pierre Poilievre has been advancing solutions to help people. He advanced solutions around making food more affordable by getting rid of packaging tax, getting rid of the industrial carbon tax, which places
But he wasn't able to win the
industries.
election.
No, but he's advanced that as part of a minority government. And if we're going to have unity, then the government needs to work with opposition parties.
So do you think Pierre Poilievre will be the leader come next spring?
Oh, of course. I think there's strong support. I think he has been proven right. All of the major issues of the last couple of years, carbon tax, people said he was wrong, he was proven right. Housing, people said he was wrong, he was proven right. Inflation, people said he was wrong, he's been proven right. And so, he needs to continue to fight for solutions that people are looking for. And until the government decides that they want to work with the opposition as opposed to just digging in, that's the way we're going to get solutions, by having the government work with the opposition parties. And, it's unfortunate that Chris doesn't want to be part of the solutions and championing those issues, as opposed to just being part of 11 Liberal MPs. And, we've seen from the first Trudeau mandate, we saw from the Chrétien mandate, 93, 97, when all the MPs are one party, Nova Scotia ends up getting taken for granted.
All right, well, interesting times in politics for sure. Thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Amy.
Coming up, several people are dead and more injured after a fiery plane crash near a Kentucky airport.
And the U.S. Supreme Court will be weighing the legalities of Trump's tariffs in a test of his presidential power. Welcome back. Prime Minister Mark Carney is trying to sell his new economic plan to Canadians and opposition members.
The budget includes big spending, big cuts, and a big deficit. And as Ashley Burke reports, it's no sure thing the Liberals can get it passed.
The Prime Minister trying to sell his budget to Canadians, starting with workers at a maintenance facility for Ottawa's light rail transit.
We will modernize our buses and trains that connect our communities.
Mark Carney focusing on $50 billion for local infrastructure in his plan.
In too many of our communities, the hospitals were built in the 1970s, and they're now serving twice the population they were designed for.
Carney pointing to $5 billion to build more emergency departments, urgent care centers, and new equipment for doctors and nurses. After releasing a budget with little that hasn't already been announced to help Canadians' bottom line. Carney now facing questions about if his plan is actually as transformative as he claims.
Do you think you might have overhyped this budget?
Look, I've been around a lot of budgets. This is a very different budget. I have a different view. The scale of investment that has not been seen, full stop.
But the scale of government cuts, 40,000 jobs, isn't sitting well with some.
Ordinary Canadians are going to be impacted by these cuts in dramatic ways. It's not just public servants losing their jobs. That is a terrible thing to be doing in the middle of an unemployment crisis.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Conservatives taking aim too over the government spending.
While Canadians are already unable to eat, heat, and house themselves, why is this Prime Minister's costly budget making them pay even more?
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this budget has 75% of the measures are for our sovereignty.
The NDP has issues with the plan too.
You know, it's a big disappointment there's nothing about, grocery prices. Mr. Carney said that he will be judged by citizens on the price of grocery, and we saw nothing in that budget.
The Liberals still need to get some opposition MPs on board to avoid an election. The NDP says they'll be talking to their constituents next week before deciding how they'll vote later this month. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Emergency workers are searching for more victims after a plane crash Tuesday at Louisville, Kentucky airport. At least 9 people died and 11 others are injured, and the video we're about to show you may be disturbing to some viewers. That's video from a dash cam of a truck. The UPS cargo plane was taking off from the company's main distribution hub, headed for Honolulu. It lifted off slightly off the ground before crashing and exploding into a fireball. Investigators are looking at engine failure as a possible cause.
The U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments Wednesday over Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs. The justices are weighing whether Trump exceeded his power as president when he imposed tariffs on dozens of countries, including Canada, earlier this year. It could take months for the justices to render their decision, but as Katie Nicholson reports, they seemed skeptical of the Trump administration's arguments.
Before the arguments even began, Democratic lawmakers lined up outside the Supreme Court, making their case.
They're allowing Trump to tax any good from any country for any reason, as long as he calls it an emergency.
Inside, arguments scheduled for 80 minutes ran for twice that, a case that seeks to answer 2 main questions. Whether the president has the power to impose tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the 1977 law he used to justify sweeping duties on other countries, citing the border and fentanyl trafficking.
President Trump has declared that these emergencies are country-killing and not sustainable, that they threaten the bedrock of our national and economic security.
The case also aims to answer whether it is even constitutional. The plaintiffs in the case say it is not.
Our founders gave that taxing power to Congress alone. Yet here, the president bypassed Congress and imposed one of the largest tax increases in our lifetimes.
The lower courts have ruled against the Trump administration. The Supreme Court justices, even the conservative ones, skeptical, especially about the Oval Office taking power away from Congress.
What president's ever going to give that power back? Pretty rare president.
Trump has repeatedly made it clear how important this case is to him, posting last night on social media, The United States Supreme Court case is literally life or death for our country. A Supreme Court decision against the tariffs, Trump's signature accomplishment, could be potentially embarrassing and also be an administrative quagmire if plaintiffs get to claw their duties back, as Justice Barrett noted.
You're saying before the government promised reimbursement, and now you're saying, well, that's rich, but how would this work? It seems to me like it could be a mess.
If the Supreme Court rules with the lower courts, the administration could still try to enact other tariffs, one through an act in the 1970s and another one going all the way back to the 1930s. But those would also likely face court challenges. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Washington.
Democrats have swept the first major U.S. election since Donald Trump returned to power in January. Candidates clinched several key races across the country and in the nation's most populous city in Tuesday's vote.
New York, tonight you have delivered a mandate for change.
New Yorkers chose Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani as their next mayor. Democrat Abigail Spanberger won the race for Virginia governor. The former congresswoman flipped the state after 4 years of Republican leadership. The Democrats also won the governor's race in New Jersey and in California voted yes to redrawing its voting district maps, which could theoretically benefit the Democrats in the next year's midterms.
It's 1 year since American voters picked Donald Trump to be their president. He was sworn into office in January, and a lot has already happened in his second term. So how are voters feeling about it now? Katie Simpson put that question to people in Starr County, Texas, a border community that is facing difficult economic times.
We are in the heart of Southwest Texas, a place called Starr County. Right over here, you've got the Rio Grande River, you've got Mexico. On this side, you've got some cliffs, and you've got the border wall right here on the American side. We decided to come here to get a sense of how voters are feeling 1 year after Donald Trump won the election. And we picked Starr County in particular because something unusual happened here. For 132 years in a row, voters in this county had voted for the Democrat who was the nominee for president. That was until 2024. Donald Trump became the first Republican at the top of that ticket to win. The key issues in that vote had been making life more affordable. Voters liked Donald Trump's promises on that and his hardline immigration policies. To get a better sense of how voters are feeling, what they think he's done so far, we asked. 1 year after the election, what do you think about what happened? And has your life changed at all?
Can I say it in my own words?
Yes.
He's a piece of shit.
Tell me why you feel like that.
Because poor people are suffering. Old people like me, I'm 80 years old, are suffering. He wants to take our health cares away. He wants to take all the programs from the kids. People are starving.
Immigration has changed dramatically. Like you'd see literally people crossing the border illegally, not through our port of entry, but through the river. We'd see them crossing and cross through our historic plaza here, downtown area, and being processed here. So we'd see family units by the hundreds sometimes, and at all hours of the day and night. Now we don't see that happening. And the reality is that if we do, it's very rare, but I don't see illegal immigration. I'm sure it's happening. To what extent, I don't know. I don't have the numbers, but we don't see it like we did under the Biden administration.
Of the voters we spoke with, no one openly said that they regretted their vote on either side. And those Trump supporters, those Trump voters, they said that they're willing to be patient to give him more time to implement his agenda. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Starr County, Texas.
Drone sightings forced the temporary closure of a number of airports in Belgium Tuesday. Several such incidents have caused major disruptions across Europe in recent months. It's unclear who's behind the drone events, but as Briar Stewart reports, she was aboard the NATO surveillance flight this week looking for Russian incursions over Poland.
We're on board a NATO surveillance plane that has been monitoring the skies over Poland. Now, there's an awful lot we can't show you because information is classified. In fact, this entire area here has confidential material, which is why it's been roped off with this curtain. Now, this plane is taking part in a NATO mission called Eastern Sentry, and it was launched back in September after around 20 Russian drones crossed into Polish airspace, with a number of them crashing. Now, at the time, Russian officials said that they didn't directly target anything in Poland, but European officials and many security experts believe that Russia was probing, looking for weaknesses. Now, in terms of this plane, it's equipped with a very large radar dome, which means the crew can see more than 500 kilometers in any direction, so they can spot other planes, they can see ships at sea, and of course other large threats such as an incoming missile if there was one. But really the challenge now has been drones, not only the drones that crossed into Poland, but in recent weeks there's been a number of drone sightings over other European locations, including airports, which have led to closures.
It changed a bit though, what we are looking at or what we are looking for. Now we are talking about small drones or even smaller drones. It becomes smaller and smaller, and so we need to tweak our system to be able to see those drones. The normal aircraft will not have the same radar return as small drones, so we have to tweak the system to make sure that we are able to see those.
In terms of this mission, it's not clear how long it will run for, but what the crew says is that it's acted as a deterrent, having this plane in the air, and since in September, they've seen a real reduction in the number of airspace violations. Briar Stewart, CBC News, in the skies above Poland.
Pitcher Shane Bieber is going to remain with the Blue Jays.
The tying run in the fifth. Strike three.
The former Cy Young Award winner reportedly opted to pick up his player option rather than choosing free agency. Bieber won Game 4 of the World Series against the LA Dodgers. He was a trade deadline acquisition from the Cleveland Guardians. His decision to stay with the Jays is a big boost for the starting rotation. Other Blue Jays up for free agency include Bo Bichette, Max Scherzer, and Chris Bassett. Well, Canada's main stock index gained more than 300 points on Wednesday, helped by strength in the basic materials sector, while U.S. markets also climbed higher. Here's a look at the numbers as we head to break.
This weather update is brought to you in part by Atlantic Lottery's iGames. Play hundreds of games on the Atlantic Lottery app or at alc.ca.
All right, we're digging into the picture file once again tonight.
Yeah, probably no more leaves on the trees pictures, right?
No, we're looking above that, way up. This was spotted in the skies last night in parts of Nova Scotia.
Oh, what is that? Yeah.
And also New Brunswick.
I think it's a fidget spinner.
It does look like a fidget spinner. So this was created by the Ariane 6 rocket, which was launched from French Guiana earlier in the evening, but the rocket's trajectory took it into a polar orbit, which made it visible over eastern Canada. What you're seeing here is a part of its deorbiting sequence, the rocket's upper stage releases excess fuel. So it dumps a bunch of fuel, and that fuel then instantly freezes in the atmosphere into very tiny ice crystals. And that's what creates this very, very cool effect, is that fuel freezing into ice crystals. And a big thanks to CJ Bernard, who's in New Brunswick, but follows along and sent me this. Fantastic picture, and many folks wondering, what was that?
Not a giant fidget spinner.
Okay. Not a giant fidget spinner, though that was second up. Yes, so as we look at the skies overnight tonight, it's going to be pretty cloudy. We've got the rain tracking in, and yes, the wet snow that will mix in for higher terrain areas, inland higher terrain areas, as we move into Thursday morning, especially the Cobequid Pass and the Cape Breton Highlands and the higher terrain areas out towards the northeast. Now, as we move into Thursday afternoon, rain and some wet snow lingering for Cape Breton, scattered showers across Nova Scotia becoming a little less frequent into the later parts of the afternoon. And again, those winds are going to be a factor as well. As you can see, they will be really howling into the afternoon on Thursday and into the evening with gusts 60, 70, even 80 kilometers per hour along parts of the coast. Just enough time here to look at our 7-day, which features a big warm-up for Saturday and another shot of rain coming Monday.
All right, Ryan, thanks for that. Well, the biggest supermoon of the year lit up the sky around the world overnight and into this morning. November's full moon is also often referred to as the beaver moon, marking the time of year when beavers begin preparing for the winter.
As you can see, the full moon was shining brightly as it rose above Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia. It was also visible from other landmarks around the world, including above the Kremlin in Moscow.
The moon is considered a supermoon when it's closer to Earth than usual, making it look larger.
What a spectacle it was. That's it for us tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.